Good evening, DS learners. Today we are going to see something about the programming models instead of looking at something very core from data science or machine learning. Because most of the time, what happens is once you start developing the models, the ultimate part is to expose them using an API, and then the downstream applications would consume that model using those APIs. So most of the time, even we discussed inside our previous videos also, the end goal of developing any machine learning model or some data science project is to expose them to the downstream applications. And we even discuss this topic in blogs and videos, saying that uh, we'll expose this model in an API format, and then you pass the parameters to that API, and API ultimately consumes the model and then give you the result back. So if you see here, basically we have three different technologies. That is what we are going to use. We are going to use fast API for the API development. The technology behind that is Python, and then we are going to develop the front end, which should be in React, which is JavaScript library, and then ultimately we are using the backend as a MongoDB. The queries to see the data and to write the queries inside MongoDB, it's almost equivalent to a JavaScript syntax, but it is not the actual JavaScript. So combinedly, these three technology stack, we call it as the form stack. This is the most in demand stack these days if you are a Python developer. So similar to this, in past we have other technology stacks like MERN stack and then Burn stack. MERN stack basically stands for Mongo, Express, React and Node, and then Burn stack stands for PostgreSQL, Express, React and Node. Okay, so basically the stack means it's the commonly used tool set. Okay, which developers tend to use. So once you pack those tool set into a combined way, so that becomes a stack. So this is the tool suite developers tend to use more commonly, so it becomes a stack now. So in this tutorial we will be seeing about the form stack. So fast API, React and Mongo, that's called form. Okay, so without any further more delays, let me create a new project and then we'll start coding from it. Okay, so I'll put it on my desktop and then I'll say form stack, or I'll say fast API MongoDB. Okay, fast API MongoDB, and then so we'll be creating the virtual environment, and my Python runtime is 3.10, which is the most recent one. And yeah, that's it. I think like we can create, and then yeah, I just chose this fast API here if you see it, right? So just create. Okay, so yeah, it gave a small template for us, and then yeah, it's good. I'll not run anything more. So what I'll do is I'll delete, and then I'll make this a route modification, and then it will result say health of my APIs or server. It says okay. So that's what is this whole code about. So before doing anything, let's create some folders here. So I'll create a directory called config. This is basically a scaffolding, so there is no specific structures that are given or guided from the fast API itself. but out of the experience and then going through a lot of articles and then the standards, it is good that you have a proper scaffolding to cater your code base into different modules. Okay, so for this I'll create a config. I'll put models. We create some models. I'll tell you, this models is not the data science or machine learning model. The models here is different. Okay, so let me create one more directory, and then routes. Okay, and then routes, and then schema. And then finally I'll open with something called one file, which is the requirements.txt. I think most of you might know this, whichever are the dependencies with respect to your project, like you can put it and then install it. This makes the dependency management more easy from the Python perspective. This is almost equivalent to your package.json in Node.js, if at all you know that environment. Else you are from a Java background, then it's almost equivalent to your pom.xml inside the Maven structures or Maven projects. Okay, so let's put the dependencies. So I'll say fast API, the latest version is 0.95 5.0. Okay, what it is saying, okay, 0.95.2. okay, the most latest is 95.2 patch they have released it. Okay, and then UVCon, this is the server, guys. Okay, UVCon is the server, the web server on which like the fast APIs would run in. So it's almost equivalent to your Express server inside Node.js, and then your Netty or Tomcat inside Java environment. Okay, so and then now you just put 0.22.0, the latest version, and then we use one library which is called pymongo, which used to this is used for the connection with the Mongo database, and this library has got the driver to connect to the Mongo database from Python. Okay, so Mongo, I think it is 432, latest one. Install nothing, latest is 433. Okay, so this is 433 has come in. So yeah, let's install that. Okay, other libraries are already installed. The reason being is we chose that plugin inside my IntelliJ, which is that fast API, right? So obviously when you select it, so IntelliJ bought those fast API related dependencies. It kept inside my virtual environment already. So pymongo was not there, so I just installed it. Okay, so that's it with dependency management or dependencies for this project. That is all we should do it. Now let's go to config, and then write some database configuration. Okay, before that database configuration, let me open up something and show you guys. I am in my terminal here, and then I'll say brew services list, so which will show you the list of services that are been running inside my Mac. So if you see, I have my PostgreSQL started, and then MongoDB community server started. So now let's see connecting to it, and then which database we are going to use for our application purpose. Okay, so for which I'll be using something called MongoDB Compass here. Okay, this is the latest MongoDB Compass, and then I'm connecting to MongoDB localhost 27017, that is the port, and then I'll say connect. Okay, so now if you see this, I have a lot of databases and then collections inside those databases, but particularly for this tutorial we'll be using something called Nobel Prize DB, and then inside that Nobel Prize DB you have Nobel Prize. So if you just click on it, this is how the data is for it. So you have a unique identifier, you have a year and a category for the Nobel Prize, in which year and which category it has been given to, and then who actually contributed for that prize. So you that is an array, because Nobel Prize in particular stream, so you can get it collectively but not a single person. So if you need to have that collection, so I'm preparing that particular collection as an array, and then that will have the first name, surname, motivation, and then it's being shared by 3. Okay, so that's what it meant by. And then this is from a case. So now if you see, just read this, you will see that for the development of click chemistry and bioorthogonal chemistry. So that's what like in this particular research area, these guys like Carolyn and others, Martin and others, like they achieved the Nobel Prize in 2022 at chemistry, for chemistry in the. Okay, so so totally we have 665 documents inside this whole database inside this particular collection. Let us see now, just minimizing this. So let us start coding that. Now let me create one Python file here which says um, db, I'll say maybe it's like config, right? Config.db. Okay, fine, TK, I'll put this as a db, and then we'll say from pymongo import mongo client. Okay, and then db connection is equals to mongo client of let's write the URL that you saw, localhost 27017. So okay, this is the same URL that we used for our MongoDB connection from the Mongo client, which is Compass, that I have shown, right? So same. Okay, it is not Mongo, it is MongoDB. Okay, and then let's do database is equals to db connection, and then you have to pass the database name. Database name is which I shown you, Nobel Prize underscore db. Okay, and now you have to get the collection also. Collection is equals to sorry is okay, database of which collection was that, Nobel Prize. Okay, so that's it. We'll just format the file, and this should be okay. So I just saved it. Now let us create two models which will represent our database. You saw that database structure, right? So that structure programmatically inside Python. Okay, so that is what is the model means. So this will be helpful if at all. Okay, let me create and then I'll explain. Okay, so I'm creating first Python file which says like Nobel Prize model. Okay, maybe this is Nobel Prize model. Okay, and then one more file I'll create okay, which says laureates. Okay, laureat. Yes, laureates. Okay, laureates is basically like whoever is contributing, those details would go here. Okay, so now let us look at the data structure one more time. Okay, so what I'll do is, instead of I showing you on the graphical UI, let us even show it on CL as well. Okay, so we use Nobel Prize DB, and now DB dot Nobel Prize dot find one, and I'll say I'll pass the filters. So this is how you do it in MongoDB. I'll say it from 2022 or 23 basically. Okay, we have one document. Basically we used find one. So in 2023, this is how the data is in the physics category. Sekiro has got a Nobel Prize in climatic change, and then humanity role in climatic change for. Okay, so basically the structure, okay, we don't need who got it and all, but this is the structure. So you have a object ID. Whenever the MongoDB saves the object, it assigns a unique ID for it, and then you have a year category, and then you have laureates, and then in that laureates is an array of people who are sharing this particular Nobel Prize. Okay, so this is an array of objects again. Okay, so now what shall we do is basically first create a large model. Okay, so that one we will check something like this. Okay, so we'll say from Pydantic import base model, and then I have a class LAUREATS, so base model. Okay, good. Now you can do first name. I put normal first name, and the data type is that string, and then you can say basically that is the data, right? So name. So these are the properties that we saw it in the database. Okay, so name, and we say motivation. So motivation is a short description for which they have got that particular what do you say, Nobel Prize. Okay, and then share again is again a string. Okay, that's it. So this is the basic structure of laureates, and then we go to the Nobel Prize now, and then create that. Okay, and now from same thing, Pydantic import base model. Let us have a class, and then we'll import our laureates also from models dot laureates model import laureates. Okay, and then the class Nobel Prize. Okay, Nobel Prize extends from base model, and you can create what year, and this is of type string, and then you have category of type string, and then you have a laureates, okay, of type list, and then the list is again it's of type laureates. Okay, so that means like I'm using a generic, so I can't push other than laureates object into this particular list. That's what it meant to say. We call it in other programming languages as generics, right? So almost equivalent to that, like you pass one particular data type, you say that okay, only this kind of data can be holded by this list. So that is what we are doing here. Okay, let's restructure or reformat the file, and then all looks good. Now let's create something called schema. Okay, and then I'll tell you what exactly it looks like and why we are doing that. Okay, I'll say Nobel Prize schema. Okay, and then this is the schema, good one. So let us do this now. Okay, fine. Okay, so what we will get is basically we'll define one small function def okay, Nobel Prize. Okay, Nobel Prizes serializer, then you will pass Nobel Prizes. Okay, and then this will return, this is the return type structure, return a list of these things. So what we'll do is we'll create for now I'll put pass, and then we'll create one more function which says Nobel price serializer. So this is like you are passing a list of Nobel prizes basically, and then from that list each object is iterated, and then that iterated object would be converted. Okay, so so each object is basically um, having a Nobel Prize object. So that means like you have a year category and then laureates, and laureates is again an array of objects, right? So so you passed it to Nobel Prize. Okay, and then let us do it now. Okay, okay, now let's create a def and then Nobel Prize serializer. We'll pass, and this will give you the dictionary. I'll copy, I'll put laureate serializer, otherwise I'll put Nobel Prize laureate serializer. Okay, and then you pass thoughts here, that's it. And which will give you a dictionary as well. Okay, so that's all. So now what we'll do is we'll start coding from bottom. So let's start it from large. Okay, so it will written basically what it will written. So it will written an id, sorry, okay, it will written an id, and which is of type string, and then for this basically you pass this laureates, and then you say this id. Okay, and copy this one, and then it returns the first name. Okay, and then it returns the surname. Then it returns motivation. Copy motivation, and then it returns the share. Perfect. Okay, and that's all. So what we'll do is now let's come to Nobel Prize serializer. So we have a Nobel Prize here, again the same thing. So let's copy this one, paste it here, and then say we have id, and instead of this id we'll say now here underscore id, because the parent object has got underscore id instead of direct id. Okay, so and now here you have year and then category. Okay, just copy this, paste it here, and then copy this and then paste it here. And now we have lots, this is an array. Okay, and then we don't need this last one, and for which you will call the below method. Okay, so that means and you have to make this as a list, cast it to list. Okay, yeah, got it. So we'll say okay, fine. So first of all we are getting an array of objects, right? So that array has to be casted. Okay, fine, okay. So first of all, I'll just say this list here. I don't write it because we have to write one more method. I'll show you that. Okay, so this is what it is happening. And okay, first of all, let's write Nobel Prize serializer. So how it looks like is basically you should return. I'm using list comprehension for Nobel Prize in Nobel Prizes. Okay, for Nobel Prize in Nobel Prizes, for each Nobel Prize, what we will do is we'll call this Nobel Prize serializer. And then you pass this Nobel Prize. That's it. Okay, so that means for every Nobel Prize it will call this Nobel Prize serializer. So this serializer would actually serialize the data and it will pass it. So now here we are getting list of laureates, right? So for every list you have to get that what do you say, you have for every list object you have to serialize these individual objects as well, right? So for which you need to create one more method, so very similar to this. Okay, this we don't need it. Okay, Nobel Prize, maybe laureate serialize Nobel Prize. Okay, I'll say Nobel Prize laureates serializer, laureates list serializer, I'll say. Okay, in which like you will pass the arts here. So for every lot inside the laureate, so what we'll do is we'll call this Nobel Prize laureate serializer, and then for which like the parameter is laureates, and then we pass this object. So for every object it will iterate, it will call this serializer and return it back, and finally it will return the list of those objects. Okay, so I think we are pretty good in the serialization. Serialization is basically you are converting the structures back into the dictionaries that we needed. That is what we have done it. If you just really look into it, we have done nothing extra, but we just converted. Oh, forgot. So we have here, so I'll say a list of what I have to say is, now I have to call this Nobel Prize laureate list serializer of this, and then we need to say for or it's inside Nobel Prize of laureates. So that means like from the Nobel Prize of laureates you are getting that array of object and then passing it array of objects to this method, and this array of object you are taking that each array of object and then passing it here. Just a second. Yeah, that's it. Passing each object and you are creating a list out of it and then getting it. I think we are pretty much good from the schemas, and then let's define routes and then check if we have done it correct or wrong. Okay, so for that we'll create a route which says Python which says Nobel Prize routes. Okay, and then this one. So now let's import all our things what till now whatever we have coded from um, schemas dot Nobel Prize schemas, import Nobel Prizes prize set serializer, and then yeah, I think like this should be enough. And then we have from config dot db import I think I just need the collection because nothing else I needed for it now. So now I'll say I'll create a small variable which is called Nobel Prize route is equals to okay. Oh, one more thing before this, like we need to import from fast API, import API router, and then let's import the models also. We forgot models dot Nobel Prize model, import Nobel Prize. Okay, so this is API router. Okay, and now let's create one definition. First of all, let's create async def. I am using asynchronous functions. That means like these are like independently run. Okay, so it's almost equivalent to your async await inside Node.js, or if you try to use um, what do you say, in Java we have this concurrency module, right? Executor services. So future object, and if you are doing some executor services and then future object inside Java, so which will like run in a separate thread as an asynchronous one without blocking your main thread. So that's what we do it in Java. And then very similar to that we have async await in Node.js, where the function executes asynchronously without disturbing your normal routine. So your normal routine would continue as is, but whereas the asynchronous function, once it completes in Node.js, it will return a callback function, and that particular callback is called. Very similar to this in Python is again async definitions. So async will say find all Nobel prizes. Okay, and for which like you don't pass anything, and then we'll map one URL path for this. So I'll say @Nobel Prize route dot, and then there are, I think you might be knowing, there are 4 to 5 different predominantly used HTTP verbs, like get verb, put verb, post verb, delete verb, and then you have patch verb and all these things. These verbs are basically specify the kind of action that you are trying to do on your business logic. Okay, if you say get, then it meant that you are fetching some data out of the database, or you're doing something related to the fetch operation. Okay, and if you say post, HTTP post verb, then that means you're doing some kind of operation on putting some data or posting some data into the database. So for now we're using get, and then I'll say slash Nobel Prize. Okay, and we'll say here um, a Nobel Prize serializer, and then we'll say collection dot find. That's it. So I'm passing whole collection to the serializer will serialize that into the required format, and it will give me, I'll say this as data, and this data is in the form of list of Nobel Prize. Okay, so this is what it is. And then finally I'll say written is basically a dictionary. I'll say status. Okay, and then I'll say data is again the data. Okay, and then I'll put the total records as well. That will be good for us. I'll say total uh, length of data. Okay, so this will give us more good picture. Okay, now since we have done everything, even the route is ready, so now we just need to configure this route in our main file. Okay, that how we do it is basically from routes dot novel price import novel price route. Okay, and then we'll say app dot include router of novel price route. Okay, that's it. So with this it should be done. Okay, so now let's run the fast API MongoDB here and then see how it looks like. Awesome, there is no issue. It created the connection to the database and it is running fine. So let's open the browser. Okay, and then check. Okay, so these are the few articles that we can go through. So first of all, you can go through the fast API Mongo, the date documentation. So this is how the documentation would look like. You can read the whole documentation, and then these are open. The reason being is I keep on verifying the documentation for the APIs or the functions or the methods that I need to use. At the same time, in MongoDB blog, they have a couple of articles on how to use this form stack, and then how to get started with MongoDB with a fast API and all. If you just want it, just go there and then refer to this. So now if you see it's running on 8000 if I'm not wrong. So yeah, it's running on 8000, right? So now say this as port as 8000 slash docs. Awesome. So now you have two default two basically routes. One is noble price and health. So if you try to execute the health, it should return health is okay. That means like your APIs are working fine. So if you just try this noble price route, we have some server exception. That is good. Says Lorets of ID. Okay, maybe now what I'll try to do, that means like it is the problem in serialization. There is some issue. So let's go to the serializers. Let's wrap all these things in try catch such that if any exception, I think like it will bypass for now, and I don't want to fix it spending too much of time. Okay, except it's like exception as E, and we'll cut this, paste it here, and then we'll say print the E dot cause. Okay, so that means like you'll get the cause. Same thing, we'll do it for everything. Okay, this also will wrap that. Okay, and then print it. Little tedious, but it's okay. Okay, so I think we are good enough. So now if you see, after I save this file, it automatically reloaded, which is called the watch flag. Internally it does this. So it's running the UVCon server with a flag called -- reload. Okay, if you go through the documentation, you will get to know that. So that means whenever there is it's actually watching for the modifications, and whenever there is a modification, your UVCon server automatically reloads such that your modification gets reflected into the updated version inside that server. Okay, so now let's go back to our browser and then refresh, and then let's try out. Okay, so that means there is some issue inside our large serializer. That's the reason we are getting this issue. So let's go to the serializer and then check it. Okay. Okay, so large schema serializer, so we are getting it here. So what exactly has been done? Okay, so that means we are doing it for ID, name, last name. Okay, so now let me just go through for this two. Nobel Prize. Okay, is serializer, Nobel Prize serializer. For each Nobel Prize, we are going to this. Okay, so and then here laureates we are passing, laureates list serializer. Here for every laureate you are passing Nobel Prize. Okay, and here Nobel Prize laureate serializer we are doing ID, first name, survey, motivation, and then share. Okay, string of laureates of this one. Things looks good actually. For me, I'm not seeing any kind of issue. After few minutes of debugging, I found that Laureate's serializer inside the schemas, right? So the list comprehension was not behaving properly, so I just rewrote that. And then now let us stop and then rerun the code, and then we'll see how it looks like. So basically I was doing it in my debug mode, and then I passed it, hit it, and then I iterated through every object, and then I saw like it is not behaving properly. So okay, that is how the debugging strategy that I have done. I paused the video and then I did it. Now again we are resuming it. So let's open okay, docs. Okay, fine. So let's go here and then swagger, try it, execute. Okay, yep. So now if you see this, we have a total of 665 records. So that's what we were even seeing in our MongoDB compass. So inside this total collection we have 665 documents available, right? And everything, every object. What if suppose you want to pass some filters into it? That is the next bigger question that we'll have. So what if suppose I want to only get by category or only get by year? Okay, that also you can do it. So let us go into our code base again, go to your routes. Okay, and then let us do a few small tweaks here. Okay, you can pass category, right? So that could be string or none, right? If you don't pass it, by default I am assigning it to none. Okay, and then again saying I have a year, again same thing, it is a data type string or data type none, and then by default value is none. Okay, I'm putting a variable called query, which is a kind of a dictionary, and then if category is not none, then I'll say query of category is equals to category. Similarly, I'll copy paste this. Okay, then I'll check this for year not equal to done, then I'll pass this year to then key value pairs as year. And now I'll remove this breakpoint, and to this find method there is something you can do. You can pass this query, and you will get the data out of it. Okay, so now let us save this, and now if you see the server restarted. Let's go back to our Swagger and then just do a refresh. Now if you see, once you refresh, there are two parameters that are being shown. Previously these two are not there, right? So if you just try out without passing these details, if you try out, so you get 665 total in back. Let's pass the category. I'll say chemistry. Okay, spelling mistake. Okay, and then execute. Okay, so you got total of 122, and if you see, every data item is with respect to chemistry category. So chemistry, and then the next is chemistry in 2021, chemistry in 2020. So you have a lot of things. Chemistry in 2018. Okay, now let us see all the things from only 2019. So I don't want to get the all the records from 2019. So we have only 6. So in 2019 we have chemistry, 2019 economics, 2019 literature, 2019 peace, and in 2019 we have physics, and 2019 medicine. So how these filters are working, you saw it. So now the next thing would be, maybe you can get it by ID. Okay, so that let us code that one as well. So let us do this. So let's write one method async, one last method, find Nobel Prize by ID. Okay, and then for which I'll pass ID, and I'll code this at the rate Nobel Prize route dot get. I'll say this as slash Nobel hyphen prize slash ID. So we will only get one specific ID. If at all you want to know more details about one particular Nobel Prize, so you just need to pass that ID associated to that Nobel Prize, and you will get only those details. That is the intention of this method. Okay, and here ID is mandatory because we are getting by ID, right? Nobel Prize by ID, so definitely ID is mandatory. Okay, and now I'll say, okay, I'll copy this same, but instead of this query, I'll write my own thing here, underscore ID dot, okay, there is something object ID from bson, so that you need to get it from bson import object ID. Okay, so you need to get object ID of this particular ID, and finally you will get data. Okay, and then you will say same thing again. I'll say written copy. That's it. I'll say save, reload it again. So just go back to your browser and then say refresh. Now you see there is one more route added, which is Nobel Prize slash ID. So now what we'll do is, previously we, okay, now that is gone, right, because we refreshed it. So okay, let's try here an year of 2019, and then just execute, and then I have this ID, copy this. Okay, minimize this, go to ID, and then now you try out and pass this particular ID here, and then say execute. Okay, so only that particular record, if you see the total is 1, so that particular record has come into picture, nothing else. So now if you see, this is like with respect to chemistry, and then all the details with respect to that particular Nobel Prize. So so that is like how we get by ID, or we call it as get by ID. This is like find all. Okay, now you can write put, delete, and then post. Okay, these are like for just leaving wantedly for you guys to code it on your end, like practice. I'll give the whole code in my GitHub repository as well, just for your reference, and then maybe by taking that as reference you can proceed. So now with this, like, we conclude the video, and just before we conclude, I'm just reiterating. So whatever we saw is basically this part. inside the form stack. So we saw the creation of APIs using the fast API, and then integrating that with the MongoDB, and MongoDB has already got some data into it. So the end-to-end picture would be your Spark, which we saw it in your in previous videos and lectures. So the Spark would aggregate and then collate some data and then finally push it into the MongoDB, and using this fast API you can integrate to MongoDB to expose that data as an API. Okay, so that is what we have done, and going forward we'll in the next videos we'll implement something on React libraries in the front end, and we'll start visualizing different things or like the raw data itself inside the web UI, how that looks like. Okay, thank you, and please subscribe and like the videos, and then share them if you like the content. Thank you very much.